Hey folks, I just wanted to open this video up with a bit of an apology. This was recorded back on February 9th, and we all know how fast the news moves lately, so some things are a little out of date. I don't think the Canadian federal election was called yet, and now we're already at the point where advanced polls are open. Tariffs and other things have come and gone, and the election coverage has been all over the place. This is a very Canadian-centric conversation, so if that's interesting to you, thanks for being here. I hope everyone enjoys this conversation because I enjoyed talking to Steve, and I'm sure there's something everyone can get out of it. All right, hi and welcome to the Skeptical Leftist podcast, the show where I talk to a variety of people to spread critical thinking, progressive politics, and left-wing philosophy. And today I'm joined by Steve Boots.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here. If you're not watching the video feed, my cat is here as well. He is currently curled up on my lap. My regular co-host has joined us.
Yeah, I've watched your live stream a few times, and your cat makes the occasional appearance.
He's the elected president.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I guess one of the first things I like to get out of the way is obviously, who are you, and what do you want people to know about you?
Oh, that's a big question. I am just a guy. It's funny. I've sort of stumbled my way into like YouTube success and Twitch success, but I always at the end of the day I'm just a guy who talks about stuff. I cover politics, I cover news, and I try to help folks to contextualize the things that they're seeing. I think people see a lot of news and they don't always have, and I want to make it really clear this isn't meant like judgmentally, they don't always have the tools or the skill set to wrap their head around what they're seeing and hearing.
For sure.
And lots of times that's because nobody along the way ever gave them that. A lot of times they don't even necessarily know that they're lacking those tools or skill sets.
Yeah.
And so how do we work with that? How do we help that? And that's what I try to do.
No, that's pretty useful tool, I guess. Like you say, like a lot of people, they don't really realize that they're missing that analysis. They don't know how to analyze news or current events or political systems.
Well, people get stuck in a mindset of reacting. They see a stimulus, a piece of news, and they react. They don't really, in a lot of cases, take the time. Like I try to encourage people to shift to respond. Take some time, understand the issue, understand why things are the way they are, and try to wrap your head around it.
Yeah.
And like, it's so funny because like in a lot of cases, if you hang out on my streams, you'll know like a lot of what we do is just like really basic, like almost Hegelian dialectics of like, let's just try to understand the whole thing before we, lock in on any specific idea. But in politics, it's funny. There's just so much reactionary content. And like, even if you like start scrolling politics videos on YouTube or whatever, sorry, for some reason the gain on my mic keeps turning itself down. I think my cat's ear is actually hitting it.
Oh, yeah, could be.
I apologize when you have to edit this. Sorry about that. But
that's all right. I've got a pretty foolproof method.
when you see like these YouTube videos, if you Google Canadian or look up on YouTube Canadian politics, you'll see these titles with like Trudeau owns Heckler and Poilievre destroys Trudeau, and it's always in all caps and all bolded, and it's all just there to make you like just click your whole way through the whole thing. But yeah, there's just so much reactionary content, and like I am very expressly trying not to do that. Sometimes if my content is like, if I give a slightly clickbaity title immediately, like, I know I hate it, but I couldn't come up with a better one. I'm sorry.
I've officially embraced the clickbait title thing. That's the only way to get anybody to pay attention to your stuff. So
I think there's a way to do it without being like salacious though. Right?
Yeah,
if it's like Poilievre owns reporter versus like, Poilievre does shocking thing. Right. I feel like those are two different things that still it's using the same tool in a different way, right?
Yeah. I think my most clickbait, most controversial title was Lenin a reactionary or a revolutionary?
I mean, both?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. Depending on your perspective, definitely.
Depends who you talk to.
But holy cow, the Marxist-Leninist left really got
The Marxist-Leninist left, known for their chill, known for how much
yes,
they
that's
tend
right.
to just be like super relaxed, vibey sort of people.
Definitely no hero worship there. So I guess you started off kind of in teaching.
Yes, yeah. So I was a teacher for 17 years. I taught middle school for the most part, but so in Saskatchewan, you get a K-12 teaching certificate. Like I can technically teach like high school welding, kinda.
Okay.
I should not, to be abundantly clear, and would never be in a position
I
to
am
do so.
not qualified, but
But it's a K-12 teaching certificate. Like I've taught kindergarten as a sub. It was incredibly uncomfortable because I did not know the song for putting coats on.
oh no.
And that really did set the day right off the rails day one.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, so for the most part, you specialize though. And so my specializations were English and social studies.
Okay.
And so really now I feel like I've just kind of wormed my way into being like the Canadian internet social studies teacher.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I think about like a lot of my social studies teachers were really influential on me actually as a high school student.
Mhm.
I had one who introduced me to the dead Kennedys.
See, I was different. I was like your classic, like I was raised in not like some sort of spectacular wealth, but definitely some sense of privilege. And I definitely walked around with that sort of campus conservative, I know best and my farts don't stink sort of mindset.
Oh, is that right?
And like, I don't know if your audience is how familiar they are with Saskatchewan politics, but there's a MLA in Saskatchewan named Mira Conway, who's one of the more left-leaning MLAs. Generally a pretty big fan of her. In my high school yearbook, she called me a fascist.
Oh shit.
Because I was like, I thought, I was like, yeah, no, we just need more cops. You know, like when you're 16 and have very simple solutions to all of life's problems. And so it was a bit of a different process for me. I think I annoyed my social studies teachers because I was very, very sure of myself and very not open to contrary ideas.
No, that's cool though. That's funny. Everybody I think that I know that is like a really progressive person now went through some sort of stage like that. Like, because I was in my 20s when I was a conservative and I was kind of a libertarian and I listened to John Gormley every fucking day.
Oh, I listen to Gormley too. And it's like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
So it's interesting though. What I have found is in more left-leaning circles, you wind up with folks who used to have problematic views or used to have views that they very much disavow these days. And then you have folks who kind of wind up in the left with very uninterrogated views, where like a lot of times those are like the sort of the woke scolds that you hear about, the people who haven't actually got the ideology rooted in compassion and instead just are like, I'm on the good guys, so I'm a good guy.
Right.
And so I think genuinely there's a real, as much as I had opinions and beliefs that I'm not exactly proud of looking back, I feel like my understanding is a lot more nuanced and deep because I went through that process.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The unlearning of bad ideas is a lot better than just having the good ideas at the start, I guess, in a sense.
In a sense, in that it gives you an understanding that's a lot more complete.
Yeah. I can understand that. I started off so I was a climate change denial guy.
Oh.
Like I was out there, I printed, like I pirated, which I guess was illegal, but and I copied a bunch of copies of the great global warming scandal or whatever that movie was called, and I was leaving them in places like so people could watch them.
So what broke you out of it?
An argument with somebody that I really respected from my one of my best friends, who was like really good in science, and like we had this huge knockdown, drag out argument on Facebook, and I had to try and prove him wrong. So I was trying to find the evidence to prove him wrong, and all I could find was university studies that said that climate change was real. So because I was looking for real evidence. I wasn't just looking for like opinion pieces that like supported my argument.
So
I wanted real
you,
evidence.
you weren't just grabbing like Daily Wire articles that are like,
No.
climate change is phony baloney. And you're like, see?
Yeah, no,
Science.
that's right. No, I wanted the real studies that said climate change is bullshit, or at least there was some debate in it, and I couldn't find any. So,
That's interesting. See, for me, it was different. I went through, I had like the very classic sort of like, how did you become at first a liberal and then a leftist? Was like, I went to university.
yeah,
I went to university and like, I started talking to people who weren't from my neighborhood.
right.
Because in the Canadian school system, especially if you're privileged, in a lot of cases, you are interacting with like the kids at your karate practice or Kumon and the kids at your school in your neighborhood who are likely similarly privileged.
Yeah.
And so you wind up in this weird little bubble. And so I got into a lit degree at first. I did education after. I did a lit degree, and I did lit with minors in film and philosophy, which makes a lot of sense for what I wind up doing. But at the time felt like a colossal waste of time and that I was just faffing about for my early 20s, but it was great. But in a program like English in particular, people sort of duck into English classes from a lot of other majors, especially in the earlier levels. Because lots of them will need a 200 level English credit and stuff. So you wind up encountering a lot of different people. And then in a university degree, the other thing that you kind of wind up doing is you get dropped into, especially in your first 2 years, those like big 100 level lecture theaters where there's like business students and ed students and math students and whatever. And you all universally do not understand organic chemistry. And so in that process, I got to meet a bunch of different people. I got broken out of my silos. And then I vividly remember I took, like, you know, those moments where the scales come off a little bit and you're like, oh, this is all bullshit.
Yeah.
I think at the time it was called Indian Studies. It might have been Indigenous Studies at the time. I think it was in the process of being renamed. The mandatory, the one where you're like, oh, I have to take this. And it was through the FSIN. I think at the time I think that's been folded into the First Nations University now, but at the time it was like a federated college, the first federated, it was an Indigenous-led college. I can't remember what the acronyms were. And at the time, I had shitty assumptions. So I was like, well, this is going to be a lousy class, and it's going to be a waste of time, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I remember I took the class, and it was one of those things where every class you're sitting there and you're going, oh, this is so bad. Oh, there's so many bad things. And the prof is like explaining a different way of being. Not just like a different way of relating to the means of production or whatever, just a different like means of living your life.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I've got a lot of stuff I got to figure out, don't I? And so I started unpacking that. And then I took a Marxism class.
Oh, geez.
A philosophy Marxism class.
Okay.
Which was a very interesting way to come about it. And because I was still like wearing my campus conservative goggles, I was like, I'll go in and prove these communist dummies wrong. and of course, immediately read Das Kapital and was like,
Shit.
No, what it was like, well, this beardo's a big goofball and I won't pay any attention. And very much was like, I know better than all of this bunk. And then I went back to lit classes, and there's Marxist literary analysis where you're looking at stuff through the lenses of class relations. And I was like, well, that's kind of...
Okay.
And like, you know, it just kind of all a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time, like that intellectual armor breaks down. And as soon as you open to that, like, maybe I'm wrong about this. And everybody gets there a different way. But as soon as that door opens, you're like, okay, we got a lot of questions here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The climate change thing was how I kind of got into it. But yeah, like it took a lot of steps. Like you say, those scales dropping off, like introduction to feminists that you agree with. And then you learn more about feminism and then anti-racists. And you start reading about Black history in the United States and Canada. You start reading about police abolition.
Well, there's that, but there's also finding out that there's nuance within those movements.
Yeah.
Right? Like even like the police abolition movement and prison abolition movement are complicated as hell. And there are a lot of different beliefs within those movements, and rightly so. It's a complicated thing to try to do.
Yep.
But there are a lot of different beliefs on how to approach that. And so it's easy to look at it as some sort of unitary thing. Like, I think that's kind of what happened to BLM in a sense, is it sort of got framed as a very unitary thing and kind of washed all subtlety away from it.
Yeah, for sure. That's, I just had a conversation. Well, I guess it's recently published episode from like last year, but me and my co-host on the Red Review stuff, we were talking about how like, you can't put people into boxes, like just based on skin color or whatever, like, because, even leftist movements all have like vigorous disagreements within those movements. Like,
well, and it's funny because the left has been historically quite lousy at addressing the fact that there are assholes within our movement.
Yes.
Because people on the right will generally be like, oh yeah, that guy, he sucks. But anyways, and like people on the left are like, oh, well, hold on, it's complicated. It's like, no, you're allowed to say like that one's kind of a jerk.
Yeah. Well, especially like we're very stuck on our like, well, do we forgive this particular way of being a jerk or in favor of like our accepting people kind of mentality, or
it's purity tests all the way down, don't you know?
Yeah, well,
like, you just know, like, as a left-leaning creator, that at some point somebody's going to be like, well, he was rude to service personnel once, and so obviously he is not a true leftist, right? Or like
he's not a proletarian.
Some nonsense thing that they're just like some content nuke where you're like, oh, he said that capitalism is bad. Look at that. Ooh, right?
Yeah, and yet he participates in it.
He tells us about it on his Apple phone. How dare he?
Yeah, that's right. It's funny because I do have a couple of stocks. Like I have some stocks, and that is enough to disqualify me in a variety of ways from the left.
Well, it's so funny because like those purity tests are always so rooted in remember I mentioned earlier, there are some people who it's sort of have uninterrogated leftist views where they're just like, capitalism bad. And it's like, well, yeah, capitalism bad. Absolutely. But like, you can't just snap your fingers and say capitalism gone. We exist within it.
Yeah.
But you wind up with some folks who are very allergic to nuance. But you also wind up fending off the same like boring gotchas that got invented by the CIA in like the 60s. Where like the communists hate families and want them gone. And it's like, wow, you didn't read that passage very closely at all, did you?
Yeah, exactly. It's like Hassan Piker with his $1 million house or whatever it was. And for a while, everybody, like, there was a variety of people.
How dare he have a house?
How dare he have a house? Well, he lives in LA or whatever. Like, that's $1 million is probably the fucking standard house for a decent house in there.
But like, even then, like, it belies a lack of understanding, right? That it's a relationship to the means of production, right? Does he fairly compensate his staff? I genuinely have no idea, but I feel like it's a reasonable assumption that probably.
Yeah. I haven't heard any complaints, but.
And like, I don't think he really has like a team. I don't think he's got like, if you've ever seen like Kai Cenat's media room, there's like the like central command back there.
Right.
I don't know. It's one of those things though, where these gotchas are very often just an attempt to not have a serious conversation about any of it.
Yeah.
And it's so often because you wind up with two people who haven't actually got an understanding of the issue, who are just parroting what they've heard about it back and forth to one another.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. It's back to that analysis, that lack of analysis.
Well, communism is when the government owns anything, owns all the, my favorite. Communism is when the government has all the money. And then you say to them, okay, can you explain how a classless, stateless, moneyless society would have a government that has all the money? And they're like, well,
What
it
I
falls
mean is
apart so
socialism. Hey,
quickly.
no, that's not right either.
Oh, it's so funny. And so I've
Yeah.
just got to the point where I'm just like, I'll block them and just be like, read a book, please.
That's good. Yeah, for sure. So I guess what got you going on YouTube and TikTok and content creation?
Oh God. That is, okay. So there's this, it goes back a long ways. So ages and ages ago, I was I was working as a teacher, and we were in really ugly contract negotiations, and I started posting a bunch on Facebook about it. And this is probably about 2016. And those posts started going viral. Viral Saskatchewan teacher Twitter or whatever wise, right? Like not viral at any real scale, but like,
So a few thousand people liked it, but
yeah, like popping off for like a random person's Facebook account, but like not viral.
right.
And so that made me feel like, okay, maybe like I've got something to say about this sort of stuff. Maybe people are curious to hear it. So I started on Twitter a little bit, and then COVID happened, and I started putting together big Twitter threads,
Okay.
breaking down issues. And those Twitter threads again started kind of getting legs. And so I wound up with a couple of thousand followers on Twitter, just breaking down issues around COVID and stuff like that. And then in 2022, in January of 2022, I was sitting in the other room in my basement, just on the other side of the camera there, working on report cards and avoiding it and looking for something to not be report cards to do. And so I was like, well, I've been watching a lot of TikToks. Maybe I'll make a TikTok. And I made a TikTok about the head of the Sask Health Authority resigning, which is like very niche news. Like nobody really cares, right? Like,
yeah, even in Saskatchewan. Like,
and that was by design. I was like, I'm going to talk about, because I knew I wanted to do new stuff. And I was like, well, I'm going to do something really boring that nobody's going to care about just to try it out. Not to try to go viral, not to pop off, just to like see what this is like.
sure.
And it did 70,000 views, and I had almost 10,000 followers the next day. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, shit. I guess this is the thing I do now. This is now just my thing. And so I started making a couple of follow-ups, and they did pretty comparably well. And I had like 10,000 on TikTok in like a week.
Wow.
And it was like, I guess I'm just going to keep sprinting to stay out in front of this. And it started growing and growing. It kept growing and growing. But it became abundantly clear that if I ever wanted it to be more than a hobby, then TikTok wasn't it.
Right.
Just because there's no money. Nobody pays you for TikToks. Like I got little ad partnerships here and there, but they weren't like, they were enough to like pay a bill, right? Like these were not,
yeah.
They weren't like life-changing anything. And so I started posting some stuff to YouTube, and it did okay. And
YouTube
then
is a different animal. It's pretty tough to break into that algorithm sometimes.
It's tricky with YouTube. So with YouTube, like it's like I wound up for almost 2 full years posting, and like I remember I'd be watching my analytics, and like if I got like 3 views in an hour, I'd be like, ooh, good hour.
Yeah.
Right. And it took a long time. And what it really came down to was I've always wanted to have my own sort of like Daily Show, Colbert Report sort of thing. That was always the dream. And one day, like literally I was talking to my wife and I was like, wait, shit, I know what it is. And I was like, I came up with What the Hell Canada, which is my YouTube series. And the first one of that popped off in a big way and was like, oh, this might be it. This might be the thing. And it's kind of been a runaway train since then. I've added about 40,000 followers in the last year.
That's wild.
And now it looks like I'll be able to stick around.
I've been going, this channel has been in existence since 2020, something like that. We just reached 1,500 subscribers, which is a nice.
Congratulations!
Milestone. But yeah, it's a grind, and I until the last couple of years, I didn't really do any shorts. But doing shorts has like done a crazy amount of growth for the channel. It's pretty amazing.
Shorts can be really, really good for channel growth. The other thing that I have found that has mattered more than anything is streaming.
Oh yeah.
If anybody at home is like, putting on their content creator hat, I'll tell you right now, whatever your plan is, it has to involve streaming. That's where all the growth is right now. That's where all of the, and it's where, I don't know, it's making videos, especially, just feels like talking into a camera. Streaming feels like you're talking to people.
Yeah.
And so I think streaming is a big part of it that has served the growth. The other thing is and I would never, ever, ever minimize you making 1,500, because I remember how hard I had to grind to get, when I was starting, it was 1,000 viewers or 1,000 subs and 4,000 watch hours was enough to get monetized.
Well, now it's, not enough.
It took me over 18 months to get there.
Yeah.
And I've now hit that threshold in a single day more than once.
Right.
It's exponential growth. If you're adding 25% more subscribers in a month or 10% more subscribers in a month, that's going to be a couple when you're starting out. But it's about just bearing in mind, it builds and builds and builds. So you're going to feel like you're not getting anywhere until suddenly you feel like you're really getting somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the impression I got. A lot of people that I've talked to, I talk to them when their channels are still small. And then in 2 months, they're 50,000 subscribers. And they're like, oh, geez, what's going on now?
Something hits and everything changes. And this is it. But at the same time, you never want to go viral. Viral's the worst thing that can happen to you, because then you're stuck doing that thing. I think forever of the TikTok Costco guys, where it's you're condemned to go double chunk chocolate cookie till the day you die. That is your existence now.
Oh no.
And that feels like it's fun for a minute when you're making money, and then one day you're just, hey, remember the double chunk chocolate cookie guy? Right?
Yeah. And what are they doing now?
You're at the retirement home and you're like, yeah, it's a double chunk chocolate cookie. You sign the cookie, please.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. I listened to the podcast 16th Minute of Fame, but with Jamie Loftus, and she talks a lot about those people that had that viral moment on the internet. And what was his, the guy who he was viral because he was on American Idol and he was really bad.
Oh, William Hung?
Yes, that's right. And you get in that spot where now you either have to choose between holding on to this last gasp of fame, or you can try and move on with your life and hope that nobody recognizes you.
Well, and that's it. It's that sort of thing is a prison. And so I always target steady growth. That's why I never do the clickbaity titles when I can avoid them and stuff, is because you don't want to grow that way. You want to grow because people like what you make.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's and like you say with the streaming, that's the community that you build, the people who are watching you regularly and chatting and talking, and that's a real thing.
Well, and communities, everything with any sort of content, with any sort of thing you're making. When I first started streaming, it's very funny. I did not use Discord at all. And there was it's the same as anything. It's exponential growth. For the first 2 full years I streamed, I don't think I broke 10 people watching.
Right.
It was always the same 3 or 4 people, and they would just hang out and we would play video games. That was fun, and I learned a lot in the process. But once one of them said hey, it'd be really cool if there was a Discord so you could tell us when you're planning to stream, because you don't stick to a schedule very well. And I'm like, that's fair. So I started this Discord, and we started letting people join, and now there's nearly 1,000 people in it.
Wow.
And it's become one of the engine rooms of the content, not only in that people know when it's posted and go to it quickly, but also these folks, I stream writing What the Hell Canada and editing What the Hell Canada. They're a part of the process. They suggest stories. They're now in on it. And so there's one group within that Discord who are currently trying to organize some advocacy for transgender folks, and are trying to do some fundraising for it and just organizing within that space.
That's awesome.
And it's one of those things where it's real leftism has to come from community and connection and interpersonal work.
For sure.
Right? Like people always think that it's all about like these massive institutions and it's like government runs everything. It's like, it's more about like
It's not really supposed to be.
Yeah, it's like it's a little more complicated than that, friends. Like,
yeah, that's right. Like I think it's weird because people equate like the government with the people.
Mhm.
And that's just not a realistic equation. Like the government is up there. We are the people.
Exactly. And they just get further and further away.
Oh, do they ever? The richer they get, right? The more connections they get to big business.
Well, it's funny. Like I've learned, like I've gone to Ottawa for different like panels and things like that a few times, and you start to like get to meet politicos a little bit and the connected people. And what you find out is that this country is very much run by a very small circle of people who all know one another.
Yeah.
Like the big decisions are made by a couple of thousand people. And like, I'm not saying it's some elaborate cabal or conspiracy. I'm saying once you have a certain sum of money, you really only hang out with people who also have that certain sum of money. Yeah. Once you have a certain degree of power, you really only hang out with other people who have that same certain degree of power. And the more money and power you have, the more transactional those relationships get. And you wind up in this Ottawa bubble. And like, it's not necessarily like the Laurentian elites anymore, but the Ottawa bubble is very real.
Yeah, that's right. And let's like say, like the farther removed it becomes from your average working person, right?
Oh, yeah. Like Doug Ford telling you that everybody's going home watching the Flintstones.
Right.
Like, dude, the Flintstones haven't been on TV in like 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe longer. I haven't had cable in a long time.
The Flintstones was on TV at noon when I was a kid, and it got canceled then. And it's like, man, Doug, that's a deep cut, man.
I think I was watching syndicated versions on TBS a little bit longer than that when I was a kid.
I mean, the key is to get to the episodes where it's no longer just ripping off the honeymooners, and now it's like the Great Gazoo and stuff.
Yeah, that's the good stuff. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, anyone under 35 probably doesn't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Just know that there was a beloved cartoon that everybody watched. Like all millennials watched at lunch, and so they have this weird affinity for it. And then it was our vitamins, and for some reason, nobody is going to let them ever stop making those vitamins.
Yeah. Do the cereals still exist, like chocolate and Fruity Pebbles?
Oh, yeah.
It's funny.
For some reason, Flintstones branding is still very viable.
Okay, yeah, that's weird.
And then they made a Flintstones movie with the guy from Twin Peaks.
Oh,
you haven't seen it?
Which one is that? Is that the one
John
with John
Goodman's
Goodman?
the main guy, and the villain is Kyle MacLachlan. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, I remember that. Ugh, so silly. Actually, now that I think about it, it wasn't that long ago that there was a new comic book series of the Flintstones.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't it like super, like, trying to make it realistic? And it's like, don't do that, guys. No, that's not right.
It was pretty well. I mean, the art was awesome, but the story was a little weird. There was aliens. There was
just needs to be people walking in front of a looping background. That's all.
Right. Yeah. No, it was pretty good. Yeah. So I guess you got started like doing a lot of this stuff in COVID. Like, what do you mainly talk about now? Like, is it kind of focus on federal politics or like just a broad range of news or?
It is the way that I govern what I talk about is whatever I think is interesting that day.
Yeah.
Like, and that's gotta be what guides you. Cause like, as soon as you're chasing clicks, you're going to be wrong. Cause like, I am a terrible judge about what's going to pop off.
Yeah.
And so for me, I watch the federal news. I watch provincial news. I talk about municipal sometimes, but generally to weigh in on municipal politics, you need to know the city fairly well. And so I kind of keep an eye on both provincial and federal issues, and literally every day there's just something where like, well, I should probably talk about that. But there's no like special system or anything. It's just, what do I think is interesting on a given day?
So is Scott Moe on his way out then? Is he going to be losing he's not going to be the leader of the SAS party anymore? Or?
Oh, no. God Emperor Moe will be sticking around for a while, unfortunately.
Oh, you think so?
The conservatives in this country are unfortunately very good at playing to their base.
Yeah.
And so Scott Moe has somehow managed to be anti-Trump, but also pro-Trump in the eyes of the public in exactly the way they want. Right. And
Very
so
strange.
he is, as much as he is dreadful, he is skilled at base politics and has played those skills again and again and again.
Yeah, I listened to the Saskatchewan Survivor's Guide with Paul Deshane and Tammy Roberts. And sometimes I think it was Tammy Roberts said that she thought Moe was on his way out and that there was going to be some people vying for the leadership of the Sask Party.
Yeah, you never know. Like, internal party politics are always weird, especially in Saskatchewan, where there are good reporters working in Saskatchewan. There just are nowhere near enough of them.
Yeah.
And so getting that sort of scoop is difficult at the best of times, but when there's just barely enough humans to keep up with it, then it's its own separate problem.
For sure. Yeah. I listen to I do try to focus a lot on the Saskatchewan stuff that I listen to, because I'm like, I got to know what's going on here.
Yeah.
If I need to know, if I'm going to know what's going on broader.
Of course, it's home base.
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing though. Like, we are a huge news desert, and the Sask Party for the moment have managed to stay out of the really awful news cycles that they went through in the run up to the previous election. Like with the hotel scandal, and with it seems like they've managed to skate again and again and again. It's like, how is it even possible? And like, none of these scandals seem to stick, and yet somehow they'll say like, yeah, but the NDP 18 years ago, like a full adult human life ago, they
closed some hospitals. They did austerity.
They turned a hospital into a medical center 18 years ago, and we will never forgive them.
That's right. Yeah. Rural people will never forgive them. Yeah, it's pretty funny. But I think it doesn't help that this NDP doesn't do anything. Like, they try to placate the same right-wing voters as the Sask Party.
Well, so this is it. Is like, especially when you're in a province where the dominant voting bloc didn't vote.
Yeah.
You need to be asking some serious questions about, like, why are we chasing people who don't like us when we could really be chasing people who don't care about us? And those are far more persuadable.
Yeah.
Right? It is a lot easier to get somebody who is interested than it is to get somebody who is openly like, no, I hate you guys.
Right.
Interested. Right? But they're not doing that. And the one place that the NDP really are doing that, and like, let's be clear, the Manitoba NDP are far from perfect. There's still, a party that is essentially a neoliberal party, but they're at least bringing forward policies that are, number one, meeting commitments like searching the landfill, but number two, addressing material conditions, right? They had a housing first homelessness policy that is actually going to get people into supportive housing. That's a real idea. A real actionable idea that's quite reasonably costed. People love that stuff. And in Manitoba right now, people are largely thrilled with Wab Kinew.
Right.
And they just brought in 1,000 new healthcare workers. And he's able to go, we're awesome. Look how great we're doing. And all those, how you going to pay for it people, have really conspicuously shut up now that they're getting healthcare.
Yeah.
Right? It's just really worth noting, good policy is how you combat this stuff, not better politicking.
Right. Yeah, it's not the placating or I guess in the U.S. context, it's not the campaigning with Liz Cheney of it all.
Yeah. How did we lose? We hugged Republicans so very hard.
Yeah.
It's like, that might be why.
We didn't address any of the issues that people need to deal with.
I knew the Democrats were sunk when people, I think it was walking in the DNC, and there were protesters outside, and they were walking in actively plugging their ears. And it's just like, you guys are done.
Yeah, that's right. You're for sure not listening to the people that you should be listening to.
Yeah, if there's footage of you literally plugging your ears as you walk past protests, degrees of cooked heretofore unimagined.
Yeah, no kidding. And yet, the blame always falls on the wokeness, or we're too far left.
Oh,
Or,
yeah. We went too far left. That was the real problem, is that we just left it too damn hard.
yeah.
We can't specify in what way, of course, but
Yep.
boy, did we left too hard. That's
Where-
like when Mark Carney was like, we can't redistribute money we don't have. It's like, Mark, you are a banker. You are acutely aware of how much money we have.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm really not convinced of any of the mainstream economic views of monetary policy. Like all this austerity bullshit, like it's bullshit.
Well, it's always austerity for thee and not for me, though.
Yeah,
right? Like
that's right.
the example I always think of is like with all the quantitative easing and stuff, and the way that money is just being pumped into economies lately. Have you noticed that like that's really just piled up on assets?
Yeah.
It's really just piled up on stocks and real estates. And it's like, yeah, that's funny that capital seems to just be interested in serving capital.
Yeah, interesting, eh? Yeah. Funny how they
Yeah.
do that. I saw a video a few years ago when Labour, it was before Keir Starmer was the leader of the Labour Party in the UK. And they had a video out talking about how if you give money to regular people, they spend it and it feeds the economy.
Oh, is that when they flirted with actually being cool and had Jeremy Corbyn in?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And then immediately they were like, yeah, we're never doing that again.
Yeah.
Right back to small C conservatism, baby.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it was literally just because the entire like British media machine was like, he's a commie. And he's like, we should like feed kids.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Like regular people shouldn't be suffering. Like, I don't know. He almost should have just embraced the commie label.
The thing is, like, part of it really comes down to the mainstream media being very poorly equipped for class-based analysis.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are really positioned to call balls and strikes for capitalism, and there's not, like, within the bounds that they're forced to work in, they're not really equipped to challenge those structures.
Yeah.
Like, especially around the bounds of, like, oh, you've got to be objective. And it's like, well, you and I both know that's not a thing. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
But the expectations that are pushed onto them around objectivity and around neutrality, especially, where it's like, did Elon Musk give a Nazi salute or did he just miss on a high five? We'll never know, right? Like,
give me a fucking break. Right?
But that's exactly it, though, is they're not really positioned to make that assessment, especially in the face of libel and defamation laws and all that sort of stuff. So legacy media, it's not that it's bad. It's just that it's not necessarily equipped to face some of the challenges that are facing it right now.
Yeah. They don't have to placate Trump 100% of the time, though, do they?
I mean, so this is the curse of mainstream media and really any sort of, especially media that requires access. Like, put yourself in the shoes of like a CNN, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you suddenly take a hardline anti-Trump stance,
you're out.
You are no longer getting interviews with any government officials. You are no longer getting any communiques. You are no longer getting access in any sort of way. You're out. You're out of the ecosystem, which means you're kind of dead in the water. And so a lot of these politicians and political organizations use that access as sort of a lever over people. It's the same as sort of what always pops into my head is when these politicians, like the NDP have done it a fair bit, but every party's done it, give interviews to like not small, but smaller creators, like 10, 20,000 follower creators.
Right.
It's in no small part because there's a humongous power differential there where you're like, holy shit, I'm interviewing this person.
Right.
So you wind up not asking that hard-hitting question because you want to get another interview. You want to get invited back, right? And so it's not even necessarily said out loud, but it's all just sort of these implications of like maintaining relationships, maintaining connections. And like, it's not that the expectations are even overt. It's just the nature of that situation kind of creates that dynamic.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Still frustrating, though.
Isn't it, though? That's why none of them come on my show.
Right. Yeah.
Oh man, I won't name any names, but I've had many bookings who are like, "Oh yeah, I'd be glad to come on your show," and then 2 days later, after they talk to somebody powerful, they're like, "Actually, sorry, I cannot go on your show."
On second thought, you're a little
Sorry.
too critical of us.
Very busy, abruptly and indefinitely.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't take it personal because I also know
sure.
they're just trying to do their thing. But it's frustrating.
Especially, yeah, you gotta hold to your principles, right? Like, but a politician does.
Well, this is the $1 million question. Like, I get there's lots where people are like, well, how, you can't, why are you criticizing Trudeau? It's going to help Carney, or it's going to help Poilievre win, or why are you helping criticizing Singh? It's going to help, Poilievre win, or whatever. They want you to modify your coverage strategically.
Right.
And I always ask the same question. Do you want a commentator or do you want a propagandist? Like, but genuine question, which do you want? Because if you want me to moderate my commentary to support a specific party, I'm now a propagandist.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like, you can call it whatever you want, but really, now it's a very different kettle of fish. Right?
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't that long ago I got accused of being an agent for Russia or India.
Russia or India.
That's right, because I was
extremely
critical of Trudeau's forcing the postal workers back to work.
I love how, oh my God, I love how everyone's insane now. I love how everyone's just absolutely lost their ever-loving minds.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, this government policy's bad. And they're like, you're a Russian Nazi commie. And you're like, what?
Yeah, where the fuck did that come from?
And you'd be like, hey, this policy from Trudeau is not great. And they're like, I see you're a MAGA. And you're like, whoa, you're going to Google me and be embarrassed.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's just very funny to me that people are very reactionary and are the new I don't have to listen to you is you're funded by Russia. You're a Russian agent.
That's right. And in part, if you aren't 100% funded by Russia or India, you're a conservative who's just helping Poilievre win.
Oh yeah, obviously. However, I will say, if any of us are indeed getting funded from Russia, send some of that my way, because I could use I don't know, some of that sweet Russia bucks.
If I was getting funded by Russia, I wouldn't have to drive through a snowstorm to get to fucking work this week.
Man, it's so funny to me when they're like, "You're funded by Russia." It's like, does any of this look like it's funded by anybody?
Yeah, that's right. I'm paying for this out of the scraps of my regular budget. What are you talking about?
I got a new mic stand. It's $200. It was a big decision. I lost sleep over it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I've been using the same microphone for 4 years, and now the gain doesn't work all the time. So it records on one side or the other better. Yeah, but that Russia.
Well, the Russia money, it's got to go to the, I don't know, goons, hired goons.
Hired goons, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I kind of wish I had goons sometimes.
Although the meaning of that word is shifted, so
I
maybe
suppose,
you don't.
Yeah, maybe I don't. Yeah, that's right. One thing I wanted to ask you actually is because I had you on From Many People's Strength back when that was a show.
Mm-hmm.
Our show on Canadian or Saskatchewan news and politics, and since that show stopped existing, it seems like there's a lot more progressive politics and commentary coming out of Saskatchewan.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed the same thing, or do you think that progressivism is actually growing in Saskatchewan?
Okay, so this is a really cool thing that's been happening. Is okay. In the TikTok, streaming, YouTube world, all of it, COVID was the gold rush. COVID was when everybody was watching everything. Anybody could, well, not anybody, but nearly anybody could break through and get a decent crack of views. And then we had the convoy.
Right.
And so what happened was there was this really huge surge of reactionary content, a lot of like a lot of hot takery. And then that petered out. And what we have found now is that a shift has happened where people are really tired of the yelling. People are really tired of the reactionary stuff, and people are gravitating towards more substantial content. And I mean, we can yammer about markets all day, but the fact is the market has really established a desire for that sort of content, and people are filling that gap, right? And it's not just in Canada or in Saskatchewan. Like you've got thoughtful political content that's emerging from new creators in lots of different contexts in Saskatchewan and in Canada. And like, let's be honest, there's left-leaning stuff. There's actually even some more conservative-leaning creators emerging who are not awful reactionaries and are just small government people, right? And it, like, I'll disagree with them, but at least they're not like screaming like Trudeau's a whatever, right? Like, and so I think this is sort of what one would have hoped happened after sort of Jon Stewart broke Crossfire on CNN. Where he called out that sort of reactionary hot takery. And Crossfire collapsed, but then just tons more reactionary hot takery found its way out there.
Right.
I think what should have happened in that time was a pivot to substance, and it didn't. And I think what's happening now is that pivot to substance, at least to some degree. I think people are sick of it. I think you can only keep people so angry so long using the same tricks.
Yeah.
And it just runs out, and people want to have a serious conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I've always been a fan of the long form content myself. Like, on Red Reviews, me and Justin, we spend an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, talking about a particular book. So, like, we're going in depth and we're talking about theory, and we mix it in with news and current events, and like, that's I think what people like is like that. Yeah, long form, thoughtful content that isn't like just like, I hate so and so and I fucking whatever.
Yeah, I think it's the same reason why TikTok is kind of withering a little bit, and especially politics content on TikTok is withering a bit. It's not gone. There's still people who are doing well with it, but it's a smaller market. Yeah. And I think a lot of that is just people want deeper dives. There is like, man, if you put like a 4-hour think piece on YouTube, oh, people eat that up.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
People want depth right now, but like, you got to be tricky because it's also very easy to pad out a video and just make it tremendously long.
Yeah.
Right. It's there's got to be real substance behind it too.
Yeah. I was talking to Steve Shives. He's a creator on YouTube, and he guarantees he'll never do a 4-hour video or a 3-hour video because he's like, I'm not making people stare at my face while I talk for that long.
So for me, I'll usually keep my segments between 6 and 12 minutes.
Okay.
And that's kind of my sweet spot. I know I'm a terrible business person because I know there's some number that is the number for mid-roll ads.
Right.
I don't know what it is. I feel like that's probably for the best, that I'm not planning around getting mid-rolls in my videos and stuff. Yeah. But the reason why I like that length of content is because it feels like enough time to contextualize an issue without doing like the full heavy-duty deep dive.
Right.
And like, that's not my specialty. When I was in university, I did a master's in education, and I had a grand design to be a professor. I was going to be an education prof because I don't know. I have a very professorial way about me or something. I don't know. But I was going to be an education prof, and so I was like, well, I got to do a thesis in my master's to get my education degree, or into a doctorate. And so I started with a master's. I had a thesis advisor. I got underway on the thesis. I was doing the lit review. And after spending a full year on one topic, I was like, I hate this with my whole soul. I hate this more than I've ever hated anything in my life. Fair. Because I like breadth. I like lots of topics with a moderate amount of depth. I am not somebody who can spend their whole year staring at one topic and understanding every single individual layer and nuance of it. There's great value in that. It's not my gift.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've learned to just like embrace what I'm best at and stay in that sort of space and in that sort of approach to content, and it served me pretty well.
That's why I have probably 50 to 100, somewhere in there, half-finished essays.
But like, when I'm watching content, like the content that I consume is those 4-hour, like, you want to understand how animatronics at Disney World work better than anyone ever has? Okay, settle in.
Yeah.
Right? I love that stuff.
Who was it? Folding Reality, I think, is the channel.
Mm-hmm.
He did one on the man tracks, like the fake footprints next to dinosaur tracks.
Yeah, I think that's Folding Ideas, right?
Yeah, Folding Ideas. Yeah. And like, so I never knew I cared about this subject.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, I'm watching a 4-hour video.
Yeah, that's what happens to my wife when she walks in the room halfway through an H-Bomber Guy video, and she's like, why am I so invested in a sound effect? I'm like, couldn't tell you, but I am too.
It's the friggin' oof sound. Who cares? Yeah, but it's brilliant. It's amazing stuff. So I guess we're almost at an hour. Is there anything we should touch on before we go?
Vote against Doug Ford, please.
Sure.
I'd like to not have to discuss Doug Ford for the next 4 years.
That would be awesome, actually.
No, my message to all is make stuff. I get the thing that I hear more than anything is people who say they want to start making content, want to talk about politics, and just don't know where to start. And the answer is neither do I. I didn't know where to start when I started. I just started.
You just got to start. Yeah.
And I remember, I can't remember who said it, but someone along the line, a content creator that I met, was like, I was like, how do you find it in you to do all this stuff? It was some very adventurous stuff they were posting. And they were like, nobody's ever told me not to. It's like, oh.
Okay.
And like we were talking, and I was like, don't you ever worry about getting in trouble? And like, in trouble's made up. That's not a real thing. And I'm like, shit. Huh.
I suppose that's true. Who exactly is getting you in trouble? Yeah.
And this is it. And so it was one of those things of like, that's a very liberating realization. So it's like, trouble's not a real thing. There is no right way to do it. So go make stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess all that's left is, where can people find you and your content?
Pretty much everywhere. I'm Steve_Boots. I stream daily on Twitch. I post daily videos on YouTube. I don't sleep very much. I post on Blue Sky all the time. I don't think there's an underscore on there. I think I'm just Steve Boots. I'm all over the place. Just Google me. You'll find a bunch of ads for Steve Madden Boots, and then I'll be tucked around there in the middle.
Very cool. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, that's all for now. Thanks for watching or listening. Remember to share this show with your friends or on the social media site that you use the most. Thank you to everyone who supports this show on Patreon. I really appreciate it, and it helps me keep the power on. Thanks to my top patrons, Damian Marie at Hope, Some Random Geek, Justin Clark, Dan F. Smith, and Lisa Glass. And thank you to my new patrons. You can stay tuned for the list of patrons at the end to see your name listed. If you aren't a patron and want to contribute, you can do that at patreon.com/skepticalleftist, or you can send a one-time donation to buymeacoffee.com/skepticallefty. I also have a Substack where you can subscribe for free or you can donate per month. And lastly, you can get a paid subscription on Spotify that will give you the same access to bonus content and extra long episodes. If you can't contribute financially, then a like on YouTube or a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or one of the podcast review sites like Podchaser would be great. If you want to find more from me, then make sure to check out the show notes for links to all my stuff, or check out my Linktree. It's linktr.ee/skepticalleftist. That's where you can find all of my social media spaces and communities. You can also email me at mindofaskepticalleftist@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening or watching. Make sure to leave a comment on the video, join your local org, print off some posters or pamphlets, and spread the propaganda.